Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today to Let's Talk, discussions on life, love, and health. I am Asha Sims, licensed therapist, holistic clinical wellness practitioner. So I thank you all for joining. So if you're viewing at this point in time, again, please share with your friends. You can do a live watch party. Just inform whoever of this engaging conversation that we're going to have today. For those who are not familiar with me and my practice, I am a licensed clinician, but I use a lot of holistic and integrative modalities and to assist people balancing their mental illnesses or physical illnesses, and use a lot of the holistic or metaphysical approaches. And even within that, of understanding that we are all sources of being that encompasses so much that we are confined often in our thoughts and beliefs because we do not know to seek beyond of what is occurring around us daily, energetically, and understanding our connection with the world, the planets, the energy, from anything that is occurring from a volcano to solar flares. All these things that happen in the universe impacts us because we're one. And so today we're going to discuss about what is ascension. And many of you may have heard the term, but some you have never heard that term before. And I even know from today's discussion, those that are viewed, some of you are going to understand what we're talking about. And for some, it may be totally over your head, which is okay, because this is about being enlightened. It's about increasing your awareness. And as I always say, do your own research. This is just another source of information discussion to just make you say, to really understand more about what you're getting, some of the knowledge or what we call downloads that we all are getting at this point in time, and what they mean and how it applies to us in our daily being at this point in time. So I'm going to bring on my lovely guest today. Hi, Jason. How are you doing, my love?
Awesome. How are you?
Good, good. Again, I thank you for being on my show today with all your knowledge and expertise. I'm looking forward. Jason is someone that I have followed you guys on Facebook for a period of time, from another mentor to tell me I need to check him out, and has helped me on my journey of understanding ascension and this whole new shift of being that we are now experiencing here on earth, from physical symptoms that I deal with, from emotional symptoms that we are experiencing. And there's a reason behind all of this that is occurring. So, Jason, I really don't know how to explain. I know it's no such thing as a title. We try not to operate in titles. You're just doing who you are and being who you are and serving your purpose. But how would you explain what you do, or to summarize it for those on the information you're giving to us today?
So to kind of describe what I do, I try to be an example. And I believe that if we have more examples, the world will change faster. So the only way to do that is to be an example in a time that is needed, which I feel right now we really need a lot of really great examples. When I look at the world and I see what's going on, I'm like, wow, we really need some more examples out there. Because for the longest time, we've had examples. And the examples we've had weren't the people that we would want as role models for our kids and for us and for those that came before us, because they were models of something. They just weren't necessarily examples for consciousness and how to live a certain way, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of one of the reasons that we have the world that we do, is because we lack the examples. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that believe very strongly, like, hey, if it's not there yet, it's time for me to do it.
Right.
So I create a company, I do what I need to do, I build whatever I need to build in order to keep moving forward and to progress us all forward. That's kind of my goal. So when I talk about that, it kind of can be a little bit confusing for people. But think of it
Mm-hmm.
like this: we're a blanket. Humanity is a blanket, and if I grab a piece of the blanket and I lift it up, the entirety of the blanket around it lifts up with it. I mean, it's not at the same height, but when another example comes, wow, this camera is very different today. So when another example comes and they lift up even just a little bit, they don't have to do the same, then this side over here gets lifted up, this side over here gets lifted up. And when enough examples come, then the blanket levitates.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we call ascension, when the blanket levitates. Now we have a new ground floor, that it's time to move forward for. And ultimately, the way that we get there is examples. Because an example lifts up, and then the other one next goes, oh, I can do that too. And then they're lifting up together, and the blanket becomes lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until eventually the blanket isn't even a challenge anymore. Just it's floating naturally.
Right. Right. Which means in this process of ascension, a lot of this is releasing a lot of the old programming and paradigms that keep us heavy, that we can't
Yep.
actually lift because we're holding on to ideology that really no longer serves us. So how would you say in your words of what ascension is? What are we to expect for those who are totally new that have no idea what ascension is? I tell people it's not a religion. It's just a way of being and understanding the involvement of humankind. But how would you actually put it into words?
Well, so first of all, you have to kind of understand the blanket approach from another perspective as well. So you've got this giant blanket, right? And there are these bricks laying on top of these blankets, just in random places. We call these density pockets. And this blanket is a map of consciousness. So let's say that one of those density pockets could be racism. So a brick is laying on top of racism. And so what happens is as more examples of the opposite of racism emerge, the brick begins to move. And when that brick begins to move, what actually happens is we begin to feel that brick moving. And this is important to understand because if that brick is moving, then every person on the blanket is feeling the weight shifting. It doesn't mean that the brick is heavier or that there are more bricks put on top of it. It means that that concept is finally being addressed with examples, and so the brick begins to slide until eventually it slides off into time and space and dissolves into nothing. And then that brick no longer exists on the blanket. So it's kind of an important understanding there because what's happening right now in the world is we're witnessing that happening. And that's huge. That's massively huge. It's such a great time to be alive right now because we're finally facing these bricks that have been weighing us down. These behaviors that collectively are too heavy. And so as we have more of these bricks that are sliding across, it's going to look like the world is going insane. This is what ascension actually is that blanket no longer being weighed down by external forces or concepts or fixed ideas. And a fixed idea for those that are new is just something that you can't let go of. So you can believe in anything you want, but if you can't let it go when you're shown the opposite, then that's a fixed idea. So we have all these fixed ideas on our blanket of consciousness. Up here, the bricks start to slide off until eventually they go completely. And this is why I believe examples are so important. And to describe the ascension as an overall, the more goodness that we have, the lighter the blanket. And the lighter the blanket, the easier it is to lift. So to me, all spirituality is the overall goodness of a person. And that's where people get really, well, but what about these terms? What about this thing? What about these things? And I'm like, none of that's relevant. It might be relevant to your journey, but it is not a requirement for the ascension. I know a ton of people on this planet who are making the ascension right now who don't even know what spirituality is or energy or Reiki or anything out there. They have never even heard of it.
Right.
And that's okay because it's not their journey to know those things. That's why we're all here, so that we can learn what we need to learn and be an example of that so that others can be an example of other things. It would be a very boring world if we were all 100% in the concepts and lexicon of the ascension and all this other stuff around spirituality. No, it's just about being good, doing what's right in front of you and continuing to do it in the best way that you possibly can. That's what it means to ascend.
And I guess with the shift that is occurring, we're seeing more of us wanting to release these so-called bricks to reform another paradigm that does not incorporate the heaviness. So it does seem like it's getting worse, but it's part of the shift because sometimes we have to feel it and sense it in that movement for any change to even occur. So even with that whole process of and shifting the bricks and the shift, you often talk about ascension symptoms. What for many, like you said, there's many that are going through this and feeling things and have no idea what is going on. Some of us, we know that something is going on, whether we're feeling things, whether our sleeping patterns are off. It may appear as health issues are occurring. Explain a little more about what is occurring for those who are feeling, or even the aspect of downloads, because that's what I want to say thank you, because what you're getting downloads of information that you have accepted and giving back to us to help understand, because you're processing and giving it back out to us to relay the information. So many of us are getting downloads too, but have no idea what we're getting, who we need to tell it to, who's going to think we're crazy or understand what we're talking about. So if you can explain a little bit on what the downloads you have received and given back on how we are to adjust from a mental, physical, and spiritual aspect.
So imagine that you have all these bricks inside of you, and you don't know that you have these bricks inside of you. And we're on this blanket approach again, just because it's really easy to explain it to people that are just starting as a blanket. Anyone can visualize like a blanket, and you can put bricks on the blanket. Anyone can visualize that. It's really easy. Well, if a brick was on a blanket and you lifted the blanket, it would start to tear that blanket a little bit. That tear is the density coming out. It's rolling off the blanket, but it's damaging it a little bit. And our consciousness can be affected by these bricks as they slide through the collective, right? And this is important to understand because you might have the brick inside of you. So it's under the blanket and it has to be pulled through the blanket to come to the top of the blanket to finally slide off. And that can be a very big challenge. And many people say they feel like they're giving birth because it's so intense, bringing their true self online. And what that means is that your body has to repurpose itself. The DNA literally has to change. The way that you function in the world changes too, because the vibration, this bubble around you, begins to turn on and oscillate. And this is actually what's happening at the end of this week is the body speed up phase. That's where our molecules are going to speed up for a little bit of time to shake out the remaining bricks within us. This is going to be one of the strongest collective purges because this is the first time every single person on the planet will be affected by it. Not just a group or another group of examples or a big group of examples. No, the whole world is going to go through a body speed up phase. And that means that they're going to start speeding up like this. And those particles are going to start to get hot because with friction, you get heat. And so you might feel like you're like, wow, I feel like I have hot flashes. I feel like all this stuff is coming out. I don't understand what's going on. I'm not a bad person. Well, it's not about you being a bad person. It's about you being part of a blanket. And you realize that you're on this team called Team Humanity. You begin to understand that whatever that brick slides over you, it's going to cause friction. You're going to start to feel heat. And there's going to be a lot of them flying off because the blanket is getting ready to leave. That bed that it's on, so to speak, so that it can move to the next level. And that's Ascension, right? So that's November 8th, this point. This strong point in the sand is November 8th. And so we have until then to clean up all of this. And this is a lot. So you're going to go through a lot of craziness. The world is going to go through a lot of craziness. You said you've been following me for a bit. So you know that like I basically predicted the pandemic and what was going to happen with it. The reason I did that was because I looked and I saw that the collective blanket was about to get covered in stuff. And the most common side effect of that is sickness. You see, when we have fevers, when we actually get a virus, it unlocks our DNA. When we overcome that, we become stronger and greater because of it. So in order for us to move forward, we had to have that experience. Just like I think that somewhere around October, November, maybe even in December, we're going to be going through another wave of energy and information that may look like a major sickness coming through the world. And it may actually be a major sickness. It doesn't matter because what is in the physical plane is a manifestation of what is in the spiritual plane. So I don't know if you noticed this or not, but that pandemic, many people were asymptomatic. That was the first time that something like that had happened. Why is that? That's because they didn't need to go through those extreme purges because their systems had been strengthened already. They were already prepared. So if we get another virus, it might not look like we think it will look because we are getting so that we're moving so fast these days. And with this body speed up phase, we're moving even faster. So what it's going to look like is most likely we're going to feel a collective burst of heat. Things are going to come up for us. We might start to feel like our thyroids are going into hyperthyroidism, and we might start feeling a little bit sweaty and these weird little hot flashes and things like that. Our teeth might start hurting as we begin to change who we are, because your teeth is where you store your earth wisdom. Well, that's all about to be majorly updated, right? Your knees may be a little bit more challenged because that's your ability to move forward. So there's going to be a lot of really interesting things moving forward. And one thing that you can do that will make your life so much easier right now, if you just listen to me, this one thing, it's so easy. All you do is put the tongue to the roof of your mouth like this. That's it. Just try to stay doing that for the rest of your life. Because what it does is it creates a connection between heaven and your ability to come into your heart. And if we train ourselves to do that, it will actually naturally clean your jaw up. It will take a lot of the stress out of your body, and it will help you to be in the right frame. So that alone is going to help with almost all the Ascension symptoms. And all you got to do is train yourself when you're not doing it to do it. Now, when you're talking, it's obviously very hard to do, but when you're not talking, do that. When you're sleeping, learn to do that. That's huge. Huge, huge, huge. The other thing is connecting your heart and your stomach. That's it. Because
The heart
there's
and
this thing.
stomach. Okay.
Yeah. So the heart and the stomach, you can't see because this camera for some reason. But anyway, the heart and the stomach, the reason that you want to do that is because you have this thing called the fear belt that goes across your ribs. So directly under your ribs, there's this little piece that goes all the way around. And that's your fear belt. And what happens is you're unable to connect your heart to your stomach, which is your ability to process earth, until you've removed that fear belt. So when you manually connect the two, your energy system actually allows you to process the earth and the energies of the earth so much more efficiently. And the tongue trick is how to, huh?
That helps release the fears that we've been programmed, because that's what we're getting, a lot of programming of fear.
Yes. So that's why most people's stomachs are having all kinds of fun issues these days, is because all those things that are junked up in your stomach, which stomachs are a very fascinating thing. I used to get colonics, and I would talk to the guy that did the colonics, and he would always say, you know, it's interesting because what you're going through is what shows up. And he was telling me the story of this girl, and this girl saw him every single, I think it was like every 3 days. I think it was every 3 days for like a year. And she was clean almost all the time. Then she has this boyfriend that she finally breaks up with. And that day that they broke up, she went and got a colonic, and stuff came out, and he said like he didn't know how it could even possibly be stored there. I've been doing colonics for 30 years and never knew that it could be that much.
Right.
Because when we're not ready to let go of something, we won't let it go. Our stomach has stuff from when we're like 4 years old in it, even if you're like 80. Because until you work on that pocket, the energy of that will stick to you. And this is important to understand because we're being shaken right now. We are literally being shaken awake. For anyone that is not awake right now, you're being shaken awake. Now, does that mean that you aren't awake in the infinite game? No, you are absolutely awake. But right now in this time-stamped reality, with your physicality, you might not be awake, and that's okay. But just understand that when you get shaken awake, it's a little bit more, not so much fun, let's put it that way.
Right.
Your body is going to be shaken until you wake up, and you don't really get a choice anymore because we're moving forward. And it's either that or your body will fall apart. So now what does this mean? For those of you that are freaked out, like, oh, no, I need to go to all these practices, I need to do it. No, you do what's in front of you as best as you can. That's it. If you want to know the easiest part about Ascension, it's the fact that you are designed to do it. Right. It's not something that's uncommon or isn't native to you. In fact, when you actually connect with yourself, you'll know the next step, and you do that next step. Then you connect with yourself. Then you do the next step. You connect with yourself, and all of a sudden, it'll be November 8th, and you'll be like, that was easier than I thought it could have been.
Right.
Because the world has made it complicated. The world has made it hard to achieve. But it isn't actually complicated or hard to achieve. Ascension is very easy. It's very natural. It's doing the right thing at the right time as best you can. And then if you can't do it at the right time because you're scared or something, that's okay too. Forgive yourself. Because no one is perfect. We're all going to make mistakes along the journey. And the thing is, if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to think it's the end of the world. You're going to fall on your face a lot when you're working on Ascension stuff. But it's not because it's hard. It's because you don't know what you don't know about yourself yet. But as you come into who you are, it all changes. And that's what we were talking about with the downloads, right? Those downloads are the highest version of you outside of time and space, sharing with you directly all that you are in your glory and your greatness and your grandeur. so that you can unlock and expand into that in this moment. So you have the strongest allies in the history of allies because they're you with all the information and they're helping you, but you don't realize that yet. And that's okay. And no one realizes that yet. You realize a part of it, a fragment of it, but the totality of it, our minds can't conceive of yet. So all we do is we do the next right thing, do the next right thing, do the next right thing. And you're going to notice that your life begins to make more sense, that you're going to build momentum, and the next right thing becomes easier and easier and easier and easier and easier. And then you're going to notice that others around you are doing the same thing because the blanket approach. As you evolve into an example, those around you will witness that. And they will begin to do it too. And then all of a sudden the blanket becomes easier. And then a third one comes. And then a fourth one comes. And that sector that you're responsible for, those things that you're dealing with, they begin to elevate naturally. That's the beauty of Ascension. And we're at the best possible time for you to wake up right now because we are at that point of Ascension. We are within months of transitioning into a new paradigm, a new way of being. But yes, it's going to be very difficult on the world stage. There's going to be event after event after event after event after event because we're going to be tested on what do we accept within us, what can we accept outside of us, and what are we willing to change in the process.
I like that, how, what we're willing to release in order. So in this process, we can actually make it hard or easy on how much we're willing to release. And I think a lot of us are dealing with non-attachment at this point in time, whether it's jobs, whether it's relationships, whatever is no longer serving our higher selves is being removed. So we can't always think that what is occurring, it seems chaotic, it seems like loss, but it's part of this whole process of lifting this blanket that has basically covered us in this aspect. So would you say, even with that, for many that are going through and that are not aware, that makes them feel crazy, makes them feel off, they think they have these health issues. So how do we adjust to these energies? What do you recommend? Is it diet? I know often some days you say drink plenty of water on this day. So I notice many are wanting to change their diet, and it may not necessarily be by choice, but the downloads of what our bodies are needing now to help with this change of energy. So have you noticed, or do you recommend that our diets change at this point in time to help handle this energy?
So it's interesting because I'm not a fan of the concept of a universal diet. I personally have my way that I eat, and it changes depending on what's in front of me. But being aware that your food intake may change is important. In fact, most of my students at this point are down to 1 meal a day. Now, they didn't go and say, Jason does 1 meal a day, so I'm only going to eat 1 meal a day, and that's how it's going to be, because then they would have been sick. But as you progress up, what you'll notice is your body needs less and less to survive, because you begin to take the light that's always around you and make it into the resources that your body needs. And this is a much more pure way to live life, because that light shines into you and helps you to heal naturally, so you don't need other things. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't like other things. Like, I love eating, so I will continue to eat because I love it. Does that mean that I'm going to eat every day? I didn't eat yesterday. So it's one of those things where you get in tune with your body, and when you're in tune with your body, it shows you what it needs. And that's important, because when you follow someone else's diet, you're literally cookie cuttering yourself to that person. Now, does that mean that that person's diet's wrong for you? No. That could be the complete right thing for you, but make it your own. So look at a person A's diet and then put it in front of you and go, okay, what do I feel good about in here? What do I not feel good about in here? Because the simple act of you making it your own, it could be the exact same thing that that person wrote. It doesn't matter. You're taking the time to ask yourself, what in this works for me, what doesn't? You see, when we resource anything into our own frequency, it allows us to expand faster. When we use anyone else's frequency to expand, we weaken ourselves in the long run. Every single time. Because it's about us expanding into us. That's what Ascension is. So if we expand into Bob, that's great and all, but that's not very helpful in the long run, because now we're going to become more like a clone of Bob. And you see this happen a lot in the spiritual movement. People end up taking on their facilitator's name and all this other stuff because they're becoming that person. but we were never designed to be anything other than ourselves. And that's important, because if you aren't yourself, if you're not speaking from you, if you're not speaking your own terms, if you're not using your own diet, if you're not drinking your own amount of water, all these things, you're slowly becoming something else. And there's only one person that you ever have to deal with for eternity, and that's you. So don't disappoint yourself.
Right. And I think that's so important, because even as I'm seeing now as a clinician during this whole COVID or pandemic, everybody is wanting to come. They have a sense of like, I need to know what's going on with me. And it's a beautiful thing that during this time period that people are wanting to go within but I think it makes sense with what you're saying, this purge, that's a cellular purge that is occurring. Things are coming to the surface that we're having to deal with, the yuck, the stuff that keeps us heavy and everything. So even within this, I ask, as we're doing all this purging and being in these confined environments now, I started to look at one of your YouTube videos, even talking about relationships and intimacy, and I'm even thinking from you, if we're purging, is this I guess you can't really say a good or bad time to start relationships, but is it causing friction, or is this a good time to really focus on new relationships at this time?
I think the best relationship that you're ever going to get in is the one with yourself. So that being said, this time is full of opportunities. You can go and play with others if you want during those opportunities. You can play with yourself if you want during that opportunity. It's up to you. This is the most important thing. It's your choice how you choose to play right now. And don't let this story of, well, what if I get distracted and I fail the Ascension, be what stops you from playing. Because if you go into that, if you allow yourself to go into that story, then you ascend in fear and you rubber band backwards much faster. Fear is not the answer, and it never has been. If you do anything in fear, be prepared to end up backwards. It will always end that way, no matter what. You can start with the best intentions and let fear guide you, and you will end up backwards. But the good news is that's actually helpful, because you went forward, you experienced things that you're going to go through, and then you went backwards, and now you're working on your foundation again. So at the very worst case, if you do or have done anything in fear, forgive yourself and acknowledge and go back to where you started, and then move it forward. And you'll find that it still wasn't a waste of time, right? It's important. You've not wasted your time on this earth. I have so many people that message me, they're like, I just woke up yesterday and I feel like it's horrible because I've been on this planet for 30 years and haven't done anything. Like, you were alive. You've done things. Now go back and heal those things that you've done, because that's how you let go of the bricks. That's how we work together. And if you do that, you'll find that everything you did actually was perfect. And then you arrive in this moment and you're like, oh, wow, everything was perfect. Okay. And then all those bricks that you took on, little pieces of, you got rid of. And so the blanket becomes lighter in that sector. So your life is perfect. When I first start teaching people, I tell them about their story. Your story is coded and perfect for you, for your sector of consciousness. No sector of consciousness is better or worse. We just choose different things because the earth needed different things, right? So for me, I'm dyslexic, ADD, and ADHD. So those were my story that I had to overcome. That was chapter 1. This is what Jason is. Okay, can I be okay with what Jason is? Can I accept what Jason is? Yes, I can. Cool. Well, now I can move to chapter 2. How can what Jason is work in the world? Then I get to chapter 3. Okay, now I know how I can work in the world. What am I doing in the world? And now I've done things, I've understood things, I'm in this place, and now I can begin to write my own story. Because eventually the main character becomes the author, and the author becomes the main character. And you begin to play in 2 worlds at once while being in one. And it's a very, very fun game when you get to that point. Because then you get to write your own books, but at the same time experiencing them. So it becomes literally the greatest level of manifestation that you can have. That is all that Ascension is becoming your author as well as your main character. And this is important because being your main character is imperative. You can't be a side character in your own book. And you know that most people are side characters in their own book, or supporting actresses or actors, or maybe they're just a stagehand.
Right.
Because they've given their book to someone else to write. That doesn't work. And you'll find that if you've done that, that person will be trying to give you back that book really fast in the next few months, because you can't move forward without holding your own book. And for those of you that have never read your own book or written your own book, you have plenty of time to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been easier every day because more bricks fall away.
Right.
So claiming back your book, that's as easy as doing it. You'd spend like 10 years getting to the point where you could claim back your own book.
Right.
Now you do it in a second. Just be like, I'm ready to claim my book. And then boom, there's your
It's
book.
done.
You start looking through it and then you're done. You're
Mhm.
caught up to everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
We all go together. That's the cool part about the blanket. If you choose to leave the blanket, that's cool. You know, that means that your body has died and that you've transitioned, and you might come back up here, or you might go play another game down here, and that's okay. No matter what you choose, it's your choice.
So
But
would
if you're
you
staying, go ahead.
So would you even say during this time that there is going to be maybe a higher influx of people leaving because they're not able to handle this energy? And sometimes they say it's a choice if we want to stay here and do this work, or we're not able to really handle the energy influx. So is that affecting why it may seem as if more people during this time period are leaving?
Yeah, there are a lot of people leaving right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I don't want you to freak out about this because a lot of people go, oh no, that means I can die. Yeah, your body can leave. That's totally possible. But if you apply yourself, you won't have to worry about that. You just, like, let's say that you're going through something. Let's say that you have a headache. You can start tapping where that pressure is. It's not hard to break up the patterns. Nowadays, it's way easier than it's ever been. The amount of net, so like your neural net, it used to look like this, and it was like compounded, and then it was tightened. And now your neural net looks like this. And all it's asking is that this space here be like that instead. So all you have to do is tap to break up that little tiny thing that's holding it. Our bodies are the most intelligent thing on this planet. We actually have the most amazing bodies. They are capable of so many things. All we have to do is support them in this time of transition. That's it. It's not hard. So if you are sick, if you are going through those things, ask your body what it needs to help it through it. And it's easy. You can just put your hand on your heart and be like, what do I need? And you might not hear a voice. Some people are like, well, but there are no voices in my head. That's cool. I don't have voices in my head either. But I know what I need. I just know it. Like I put my hand on my heart and I'm like, oh, I need a little bit of water. Okay, I'll go get water. Oh, I need this resource. I need this mineral, right? Like it doesn't have to be a complicated thing. It could be that you need to go get a massage. It could be that you need to go see anyone, right? Like you're gonna know, but you need to take the time to put your hand on your heart or find a way that's perfect for you to tap into you before you act. Because if you are your own go-to, you'll find that as you go through the journey, you need less of anything. Now, it doesn't mean you don't want to play with people, but you need less. And if we can self-source our own wisdom, then everything changes. I'm talking to you. I haven't read books. I don't really study. I know quantum mechanics better than most people, but I never read a book about it. It's what I'm here to work on. I can code at levels that most people can't. I never read how. And that's important to understand because eventually when you get to a certain point, your downloads are so clear that you actually know everything you need to know in the moment. And we're all capable of it. The CIA actually released a document saying that we're all capable of it. That's the world we live in, guys. Like we live in a world where our government is now saying, hey, by the way, you guys are really special and amazing, and here's the things you guys can do. It's all proven. It takes a little bit of training here, but that's it. Like that's the world we live in. I still just sometimes I have to pinch myself. I'm just like, wait. Nope, I'm still alive. This is reality.
We don't realize it is that simple. Is we think it cannot be that simple, but that's coming from the programming because we rely so much on external validation. You know, what did your parents say? What did the pastor say? What did the doctor say? What did the teacher say? And yes, we are breaking a lot of the formation, a lot of the establishments that have been established on this hierarchy of so-called education, and now we're able to get what we need. I mean, I can honestly say something, and I love to read, and I will buy these books and start reading the book and realize that why do I feel like I already know this information? Where is this coming from? Or something may happen. I will recite something. People say, well, how did you learn that? And I have to look. I don't know. I just know what I know. So it is kind of interesting on this whole influx of the awareness, or what some people tapping into the Akashic records, or the ultimate knowledge of source that is there that we have been so disconnected from, but it lets us know how disconnected we've been from ourselves and understanding, who we are in this process. So it can be scary for many, this whole purging of getting to know our true self, because many of us don't really know who we are, that authentic person, without, I call it the filters. As we take selfies, you have the purple filter, the pink
There you
filter.
go.
That's how we view the world. So now that we're removing all these filters, it's like many are like, am I ready for the truth, or seeing things without the filters, and how do I maneuver in this? So I think it goes back to what you were saying, and just being. And that's the hardest thing. And that's why I think this COVID has shown people, sit down and just be, and you'll be surprised on what's coming. So some people are feeling like it's depression or anxiety. It's not, but it's downloads of information
Yep.
that they don't know how to process it. Would you say that's kind of
Yeah.
what many people are dealing with now?
So imagine that you have all these experiences. Let's say that you have a bad experience when you're 5, and you and your dad get into an argument. Now, it might not be a violent argument. It could be a violent argument. It doesn't really matter, because you energetically didn't enjoy that experience. So what happens is that experience comes up here, and you push against it, and you create this thing called a ridge. And now you have this little tiny blind spot in your reality. And then imagine how many times you've had that happen to you in your lifetime, and you have all these little things. And some of them have cracks in them, so you actually have gotten used to looking and thinking that this is all reality is, right? But then as you begin to like clean it up, you're like, wait, what? This is all the reality is? Oh.
Right.
And that can be scary, because it's like opening your eyes for the first time. I like to recommend people go look this up. Look up people who are colorblind, who got the glasses that show you what life is like with color, and witness the reaction that these people go through, and understand that you're going through that just in slow motion. That's Ascension, because your sight is becoming clear. It's fun because this year is 2020, and this is
Right,
clear
vision.
sight, right? This is where we're going, and so the blinders are being removed. Look at the world stage. There's so much happening right now. So many things that you didn't know behind the scenes that were going on are finally coming up to be viewed. And I'm not going to go deep into that, because that's something that everyone gets to choose if they want to. But be aware that the world is changing, that the things that have kept you small are no longer able to, that the fact that you are now in a time where it's time to be your actual size. That's what I call this year, the year of actual size. So if you're inflated, you're going to be popped. If you're condensed, you're going to start to feel yourself expand. But you're going to be actual size. And actual size is an important concept, because you can be this big, but get triggered and be this big. And this is your actual size, not this. That's important to be aware of, because when you're your actual size, it's when you're triggered. So if someone triggers me, when I shrink down to whatever size I actually am, let's say I could be my 4-year-old self and this wound right here. My actual size is that 4-year-old self until I heal that wound right here. And then all of a sudden, maybe I'm my 18-year-old self. And then I get triggered again, and it's the same level of that wound, but it's different. It's not as strong. So then I work on it again, and I keep going. And some people, they do it the opposite. They start at like their 30-year-old self, and then they work on that wound, and they go all the way back to their 4-year-old self, which is their core wound. I personally go to the beginning and just push myself all the way out. It's much more traumatic, and it's more difficult, but it is possible to go at whatever rate you decide to go at. So if you feel called to go the other way, you can too. But actual size is your wounded self being expanded into your divine self. That is actual size. It's very easy to do. You just have to do what's in front of you as you live your life. So the time of digging never made sense to me, but a lot of people played that game, because here's the thing. Let's just say that you're standing on something and you decide to dig.
Right.
You're now lower than where you started. I don't understand that. Why do that? You see, the world has these things called winds. And these winds unearth all kinds of things for you. So you'll be walking in front of you, and all of a sudden, this thing that was buried over here that you weren't supposed to solve for like 10 years, you've worked through something, or maybe you just got out of a seminar and you're like on top of the world and you can handle it finally. So the wind of change blows, and that thing comes up right at you. And anyone who's ever gone to a workshop, you know what I'm talking about. You get out of there and you're like jazzed and ready, and the whole world's like, oh, by the way, here's everything. And you're like,
right.
Okay.
Right.
When you finally resolve those, or let's say you don't resolve those, you throw them in the front. Well, now you don't have to dig for them, because they're still there. They're just waiting for you in the future to get to. This is
Mm.
the beauty of what happens is if we dig, we're stopping our ability to move forward. We're ending our momentum and we're digging ourselves down into something that we're not prepared to handle because it wasn't unearthed for us. Our divinity, our highest version outside of time and space, is preparing the way for us perfectly. And all we have to do is walk it, live it, experience it. I have a prayer every morning where I let go of everything that I have ever understood or known completely, all of it, all my power, all my value points, give it to my divinity, and then allow my divinity to create the perfect games for me. And so then I just wake up and I'm like, all right, what games do I have today? Let's see what it's like. And those games could be crazy. It could be my car is broken. It could be the roof of my house has fallen out. It could also be that I meet an amazing person that day. It could be that the person who comes to fix my roof is the most wonderful person ever, and we have a really long, enlightening
Right.
conversation.
Right.
I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know why things are the way they are. I just know that they are. And my job is to accept that things are the way they are and then find the beauty in them. Because if my divinity is driving, it's always going to bring me in the right direction. And that person that I met that fixes my roof might end up becoming my client that I actually help through this thing that then introduces me to this thing that helps me do this thing so that my nonprofit can come to fruition. You see, every experience leads to the next experience, but you have to show up fully in no matter what the experience is if you want to lead to the next experience. Otherwise, you get a rerun. And a rerun is a part of the experience that you chose not to deal with, and your life becomes rather boring.
Yes. And I think that is so key because in my even personally and around others and with clients that I'm dealing with is this whole word of triggers recently. It's like all of a sudden, you know, and I even say sometimes that I'm glad in a lot of aspects that I feel I've dealt with a lot of childhood stuff or past situations because it's like every client that I'm dealing with is a reflection of me that could be a trigger, or I am getting triggered of things that remind me of the 13-year-old when I was in this situation. So I think, like you said, now instead of feeling like and I got angry at one point of like, why am I getting triggered? If that hurts so bad, universe, why you keep putting these things in my path to refill and re-experience? And I have to stop and, like you said, be in the moment and like, okay, there's a reason why these triggers are representing themselves for me to purge. Because if I'm still wounded and yelling out from it, then it's a place that has not been healed. So in that, your suggestion is to embrace it, not necessarily dig into it, but to embrace it, to move past it instead of going down further into the darkness of it.
Yep. The key to everything is acknowledging it. If you can acknowledge it as it stands, then you can begin to move forward. And in order to move forward, you have to accept it. For those that don't know me, when I say acceptance, I'm not talking about agreement. There are very big differences. So accepting means to acknowledge what is as it is. And agreement means to agree with what is, meaning that whatever it is justified or right. That's completely different. So I can accept that the world is going through what it's going through. Do I agree with the fact that it's going through it? Not necessarily, because there's a lot of things that could be avoided. But it doesn't matter because they're happening. And if something's happening, then it's not my job to change what's happening until after I've accepted it. Because if I haven't accepted something, I'm changing it from a sense of validation or force. And if I'm trying to change something through force, I'm never going to succeed. Never. It doesn't work. If I try to change something from understanding, it almost always works if I need to change it. But what's really fun is when you accept something and you begin to understand it, most of the time you don't need to change it because it either changes in front of you or you can see the perfection of it and step back. So that being said, acceptance is key, agreement is not. We're going to be in a world that is unified. We're going to be on Team Humanity, unified completely. This is going to happen in the next few years. You're going to notice the whole world unified. That doesn't mean they're going to agree with you. It means they're going to be able to acknowledge you, accept you, and understand you enough to have intelligent conversations.
Right.
You don't want the whole world to agree with you. If the whole world agrees with you, you're going to be very bored very fast. I think the suicide rate would just exponentially raise if the whole world was one world and pure agreement. What's the point of that? We're here to challenge ourselves.
Right. So someone asked, and you were saying about the whole playing the games, and they said, is there a workbook, is there a class, because they want to know how to just show up and be, how to trust your gut. Is there a rule book for this, or is it just something that eventually you're going to get tired of fighting yourself and just surrender?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do have coursework called Mastering the Void, which we believe the void is that space of emptiness where all things are possible. So that's why we called our organization Masters of the Void organization, is because that's our lifelong purpose and goal. And the coursework that we offer is very different than anyone else, because we actually are holding space as an example in the course for you to talk with your own divinity so that you can actually come into your own divinity and never need us. Because as facilitators, our job is not to change you. Our job is to accept you. And these facilitators are trained for years, 4+ years in this material, so that they can be an example of acceptance for you in your process so that you can heal. And it's very powerful stuff. If you're interested in that and that's in front of you, then feel free to go there and look into that. If it's not in front of you, that's totally fine too, right? Because not everyone is going to agree with that style of teaching. And that's perfect, because there are examples that teach other ways. You yourself might be a teacher that don't need anyone. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. Everyone has their own choices.
Question, what is the significance of the November 8th, again, that we're approaching?
So this is very rare. This happens maybe once every few million years. There's this thing called a sector. Can you remove the question so people can see? Or yeah. Because it's hard, because I don't have that much of a monitor for some reason today. So you've got these things called sectors, which are circles, right? And in the process of a sector coming to a close, what happens is you have the furthest event of polarity, which is what we're in. And every day, actually a few days ago, we ended this. This is the 9th, we ended it. And so we began to, instead of being pulled apart, we began to being pulled together. So we're now being magnetized towards the end of the sector. And then the day that happens is on November 8th. And at this point, this new place, which is the 5th dimension, becomes available to play. This place that we want to play then creates the next sector, which is the 6th to the 7th dimension. And this is completely different. This is understanding order and chaos, coming completely into the acceptance of both of them to unlock true divinity. What we've experienced were what are the foundations. They're what strengthen us as a character, that allow us to have the valor that we need to handle the levels of current that are coming. Because just to understand, kind of, the average human being was designed with the understanding, and actually in this lifetime, we started out, well, if you're over the age of, let's see, 23. So if you're over the age of 23, you started out on this planet with one data point every 3 hours. That was your ratio of time. Okay, now I just do the math here for a second. That's 1 hour every 3 hours. That's what you were living, just so you understand. So 1 hour of information processed every 3 hours of being alive. Now we're processing 168 hours every hour. So that means that we are living 168 hours every hour. That means that our resources that are required to upkeep this are that high as well. That's one of the reasons why we need the things we need. That's one of the reasons why we have the support we do. The amount of light we have is way higher now too. So the reason this is important is at 200, which we will be at the end of this year, at 200, your mind can no longer process the speed of reality, which breaks you free of your mind. Everyone will have to go through it. So we're in the process of losing our minds so that we can begin to see clear again. Because your mind is a tool, it's not what actually runs you. But for so many people, they were taught it's what runs you. And so they let their mind dictate what is, which is, usually your subconscious reality running you. It's not ideal. That being said, where we're going is different. So the next sector is about mastery of. So when we no longer are a tool of our mind, but our mind is a tool, we begin to understand that next sector. One way I like to describe it is, if you have the power of God without the wisdom of God, you create utter chaos. If you have the wisdom of God without the power of God, you can do nothing. And so both sides of the coin are not great, but when they're together, everything is possible. The next sector is about journeying into both of those at the same time. And it's going to be an amazing time on this planet. Like, we can't even fathom what we will begin to create and do and build as one humanity. Because Team Humanity is going to win. It is going to be incredible to witness over these next few months as things come to the surface and get cleared up. But ultimately, February of next year is a new golden age for us physically, not just spiritually. For those of you that are like, oh, but I can be a fifth dimensional being right now. Yes, you can, totally. But it's not really progressing the game along because you're not being an example. You're just going to the next blanket. We need you on this blanket. So please help us with this blanket. Because everyone has to go together. You can't just be alone up here. That's called spiritual bypassing or escapism. You can meditate up here all day long, but come back down here and help us. Because if you're the greatest ascended master in time and space and you believe that, awesome. Get over here and help us. Because that's what an ascended master would do. They wouldn't just jump up here and stay away from everyone and be like, well, until you get to me, you're worthless. No, get out there and actually be an example. We need examples. If you really are what you think you are, then be an example of it. And if you aren't it, don't worry, people will show you. And if you are it, don't worry, people will show you. Just be you. Everyone always asks me for a label. I'm just Jason. The reason I'm just Jason is because it keeps me in this game right now so that I can be an example to help everyone else get to this game. I've played on this game, and I realize that it's pointless until we get down here, up here, because we all have to go together. When you get to the end of the game, you realize you're going back to the beginning of the game with what you learned just so that you can help everyone else that's at the beginning of the game move to the end of the game so that you can come back to the beginning of the game. And each time you do, the beginning of the game is evolving. And that's what reality looks like until the Ascension is broken. And when the Ascension is broken, we break through the sector and move to the next. And that's all it is.
Time period, all the distractions or illusions from the division, whether it's the racism, whether it's capitalism, however, it seemed like it's magnified to kind of give us distortions, but it's really chaotic because of the clearing that is occurring. So it's not really a bad thing, but being the peace amongst the midst of the storm to know that it's part of the shift. It's part of the shift.
Yeah. And then the most important thing you can do, and if you hear me do and you do this, I will be so grateful. People ask me, what can I do to help your mission? This is all I ask of you. Accept reality as it is. Understand that reality, and then if you need to change it, change it. But take the moment to accept it. Watch the world and say, okay, this is what's going on. I can acknowledge that this is what's going on, and I'm going to work on what it brings up in me so that I can watch this world and not be triggered by it, and instead begin to understand and witness it. Because when we can witness this world, we become the dreamer again. And that's all it requires. If we become the dreamers again, we can dream a better world than you can imagine. But we have to take the responsibility to get the power back. And that means going through our triggers as we witness the world, not blaming and shaming the world for what it is. Acknowledging the world as the perfect playground for us right now and cleaning it up as we go. Because the playground's not broken. The playground's perfect. It's actually better than it's ever been. Yeah, there are some random things in the sandbox that need to be cleaned out, but that's on you. You get to help clean that. We all get to walk around and play on the playground together, and then we get to find where the bars are weak and go, oh, you know what? We can actually replace that. Let's fix these monkey bars so that they're not rusted anymore. Right? Because that's what your power can do. You can build a better playground with the shell of this playground. We don't have to burn the playground to the ground in order to build a better playground. We repair this playground and learn as we do, and we will build an extension. We'll build an added playground to it. And we'll build another playground, and we'll keep doing this because there's nothing wrong with what we have until we work on it. There could be something wrong then, and then you'll know what it is, and you'll be able to accept it. You'll be able to understand why it's wrong, and you'll be able to create a better version of it.
Like say geometry, it just continues to expound. It goes on and on and on. Let's see. Haley had a question. Are there any particular supplements we should take now, or do we ask our body before taking it? Is it one of those things? Is it a right or wrong, or again, tap into what your body needs?
I will give you some resources that can be beneficial. Actually, one of my posts has it all under it if you read it. But cell salts, adaptogens, Willard water, these are all really important. Activated charcoal, that's a coconut carbon. This is very important. So many people are like, oh, activated charcoal is such a horrible thing because, no, coconut carbon activated charcoal. This is really important that you understand that. If you're going to take activated charcoal, take the coconut carbon version. Otherwise, it won't do what it needs to do with the energy. So just be aware of that. But you can self-source these things if you can't afford them. A lot of people are like, well, I'm poor, so I can't afford it. Well, that's not in front of you to do this level of work then. That's not a big deal. What you do is you go to the website where the things are stored, and you just sit with it, and you pull the energy from that into your body, and you allow your body to evolve using it. Everything is possible. And if you need to physically take this, you will actually be given the financial means to take this. So if you cannot afford this right now, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't think that your journey is weaker or worse or anything. Just use the resources that are available to you that are in front of you. And you can connect to anything. You just look at a picture of it and you pull that essence into your body. Essences are really all we really need these days. So this is going to work really wonderful for you guys. That being said, just be aware that coconut carbon, not just activated charcoal. Like that's the biggest one I can really clearly say. The adaptogens are important because they will actually reduce the body's stress. And when the body's stressed, it actually takes on more than it needs to. So when you're working through that stress, adaptogens can be very helpful for that. Cell salts, you're going to be burning through those like you can't even fathom. We have a body speed up phase, so we are going to just burn through that. Willard water will keep your body running smooth and clean. It's like an oil change that your body needs every few hours. It's kind of crazy, but when you start speeding up, you'll want that. And let's see, what else did I say? Yeah, the coconut carbon, actually what it does is when you take it, your body is running excessive currents constantly. In fact, no matter who you are, you're running too much energy through your body than it can handle, everyone. So coconut carbon, when you take it, it actually takes the excessive energy and it sticks to that carbon, because coconut carbon is a little higher than our bodies. So energy will go straight to it. So the excessive energy then just comes out of your system. So you don't have to burn internally. For those of you who get to experience burning internally, you understand how bad that is. So those hot flashes and everything else, coconut carbon can actually pull that excessive heat and energy out so that you don't have to go through extremes.
Gotcha. That's helpful, and it's even helpful to know because so many women are feeling like they're going through thyroid issues, hot flashes, and all of that, and we want to run to the doctor and get these medications to help balance it out, but it could even throw you more off balance than what is occurring instead of integrating. I think it goes back to integrating with the energies instead of fighting the energy. But of course, not knowing, we panic, and it puts us into that fear mindset in some sense. So I think this is so helpful for many that are having a lot of these different symptoms and responses and not knowing what is going on, to know that this is part of the ascension process. One last thing I wanted to ask that I know I've been trying to stay up on top of. You kind of recommended some movies to watch to help people have a better understanding. Now, I finally watched, I think Doctor Strange was a movie that you had recommended to watch.
That was like almost a year ago.
I know, I'm delayed.
Yeah.
But I did watch that one, and I know there's some more current ones that you have suggested that we could possibly watch to help us have an understanding. What are some, before we close out, what are some of the movies that you would say at this time that can give us another way of helping to understand what is occurring?
Well, actually, what we were just talking about with the triggers, there's a TV show called Kevin Probably Saves the World. And it's about awakening and the process that we go through with the doubt and the fears and the insecurities, and really understanding what it is to be human in that process. It's an incredible TV show. Being Erica is probably the most amazing TV show ever made. And I joke, but whenever I open my movie company, I'm going to be finding the writers for that and seeing if I can get the next season. Because they left off at the best possible place. It's kind of like OA. OA is another great show.
Yes, I like OA.
I really hope that we can come to another season. So hopefully someday. All the other ones for this particular month, every month what I do is I do a post, and it says welcome to, and this one's welcome to June. And at the bottom of it are the TV shows, the recommendations, practices, and just kind of like a chart of what's about to happen. And I do this every month because I want to prepare people. It's usually around the 28th of the month prior because of pre-waves. And a pre-wave just means that you experience things before everyone else. So That's basically what that is.
Okay.
And the shows, I actually don't remember the shows that I recommended for this
Okay.
month because I posted them. I
We'll
know
go
the
back to
shows
the
for next
post.
month. I know the shows for next month because I haven't told anyone yet.
Okay.
So, but if you guys wanna go a little bit in advance,
Mhm.
I'll just check this out really quick to make sure. Yeah. So Adjustment Bureau is one of them. Mirror
Okay.
Mask. Now these are for July, just so you guys know.
Okay.
Adjustment Bureau, Mirror Mask, and then what TV show? Oh yeah, 12 Monkeys. Now, for those of you who are new to watching films for spiritual perspective and witnessing, 12
Mhm.
Monkeys might shake you a bit. So if you feel that certain videos are intense for you, don't watch 12 Monkeys. It is a TV show about time travel and the witness value. It is extremely powerful, but it is extremely graphic because it brings up things in you to heal. And
Mhm.
this is definitely one of the advanced things. In fact, whenever I write this on my wall next month, I'm going to put in parentheses for advanced viewing only kind of thing because it is a very strong show. There is a lot of violence and things in it, but it is very powerful. If you can watch that and accept it and witness it, you can heal so much in yourself. And
Gotcha.
that show is one of the best shows. So, but if you can't handle that, Mirror Mask is also a little bit challenging, but it's not. It's by Jim Henson, so it's not like severely extreme. It's more like mentally processing things. And then
Mhm.
Adjustment Bureau is just going to break the way that you understand reality. But Adjustment Bureau is actually very true, which is interesting. When you watch it, you're going to be like, wait, what? That's true. But for those of you
Right.
that remember your adjustments, you'll actually understand it. So.
Okay. Cool. Well, wonderful. I thank you so much. Jason, tell the people, I know many of you do know how to follow you, but in case there's some new viewers that do not know how to find you and your courses, tell us how they can find you. What's the best way of getting information in regards to what you're teaching?
Yeah, so MTVO team is our hashtag on everything. So if you want to find us on some social media, MTVO team, mtvo.org is our website. And if you're looking at technology and you want to work with like high level fifth dimensional technology and you feel it's in front of you, activationstation.org is our site where we actually do activations for people. And just explore that and feel free to. It is an app, so it's actually really fun to play with. And have you worked with Activation Station at all?
I have not.
Okay. Well, it's fun. I think you'll enjoy that.
And it's
Um,
activationstation.org.
yep,
Okay.
activationstation.org.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then if you are looking for me on Facebook, you can follow this link below or wherever it is, and it'll take you there. I answer all the questions that get posted on my wall. It just takes a little bit of time because I get a lot of them. For those of you that want to be part of the commenting, I still have like 20 spots left. So if you want to be part of commenting only, if you want to view it, it's completely private or public rather. So anyone can watch and play as they want. But if you want to be part of the dialogues and discussions that happen on the wall, and when you go over there, you'll see them. Then send me a friend's request and send me a private message and let me know, because otherwise I get like 100 requests a day, and so it's really
Right.
hard to go through them. In fact, it only shows you 15 of the requests, so I lose them all the
Right.
time. But
Gotcha.
if you do want to talk to me, send me a private message on Facebook, and I'll get you added to the wall. I do like to answer all questions on the wall in complete transparency, and the reason I do that is so that we all evolve together.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I answer the question in a PM, what happens is I get answered the same question gets asked again
Over
in the
and over.
PM, and
Right.
over and over and over again. And the goal of what I'm building on my wall is a community. And that community is able to answer the questions for others now, which helps me so much because I log on and most of the questions have already been answered by other people. So ultimately, that's kind of the experiment that we're going with on my wall is complete transparency, open dialogues and discussions. Also, it's important to understand that if you name call or shame or blame anyone on the wall, you will be removed. So the reason I do that is because we can all have enlightening discussions
A
and
safe.
have different points of view, but the moment that you make it personal and begin to like attack others, that doesn't make sense. So
Gotcha.
I don't
Gotcha.
support that.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate you and sharing this knowledge and just doing what you do. And I thank you for the time of sharing this with our listeners and all the listeners that are online with us today. So keep doing what you're doing. I continue to follow you, and I encourage everybody to check out Jason's page and his subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a lot of information there that was not even able to be covered in this 1 hour. So much more to look at and review. So again, reach out to Jason for any of those questions, and I hope that we have helped those that are part of the Ascension journey to have an easier journey and not to struggle and fight it, but just to know that the new world is here, the shift is coming, and for all of us to embrace it, because individually we are the world collectively. So before the world can heal, we have to heal individually, and that's, I think, where we start at, individually, to become collectively. So thank you, Jason. You have a wonderful day. Hope you get some rest. That was another thing we didn't really talk about, how everybody's sleep patterns are off, because I don't go to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's throwing me off. But now I understand that's part of the process. So
yeah. So I'll just say that really quick. Your brain, when energy runs down through it, it affects the way that you process information, and it can throw off your circadian rhythm. It's very common. If you actually look up sleeplessness or like fatigue with spiritual waves, it's almost always one or the other. And you don't get to choose, which is really fun. So right now I'm on the wired and can't sleep one. And usually I get that on body speed up phases. So this is pretty normal.
And then next week it may be different. You may be tired all the time,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Right. And I might not be able to get out of bed. And so I just do the best I can with what's in front of me as best I can. So just remember, though, everyone, you are enough. That's the most important message that I have for everyone. You are enough. You don't need anyone else for anything else. If you do, then resource that within you. And it's okay to want things. But remember that your needs can be met by you. You are enough.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste. Be blessed, Jason. I appreciate it.
Have a blessed and beautiful one. Bye, guys.
You too. Bye-bye.